All right, today we're gonna mount a scope onto our Ruger American Gen 2 Predator chambered in 6.5 Grendel. We've cheat coded it a little bit, all right? So this scope was mounted on my 6.5 Creedmoor, and I already have the rings attached to the scope. So if we did not have that done, we would need to mount these rings onto the scope body, but that is already done for us. This is a Sightmark Citadel of 3 to 18 by 50 millimeter, has a 30 millimeter tube, and this guy is actually in mils, not in MOA. We have one in mils and one in MOA, but we're going to mount this on this rifle. This is not going to be the scope that stays on this rifle. We're going to put a different one that's in the mail currently on this one for a permanent home. But what we're going to do is, this is a Picatinny style rail that's already pre-mounted from the factory on top of this gun. Now, the first thing that we're going to do, and normally I say, from the factory, screws are going to be pretty tight, but not always. One thing that I encourage each and every one of you to do, if you decide to do some of your own minor gunsmithing and stuff, is to get you an inch-pound torque wrench. This one is made by Vortex. They have them made by Wayland, I think it is, and there's a bunch of different variations. But a lot of these scopes, if you can see right here on this, it says 18 inch-pounds. So the manufacturer's recommendation is if you go more than 18 inch-pounds on the ring itself, you can collapse this scope. So it's very important, and this is a tool that can come in handy. Now they have them that have digital readouts and whatnot. This one's all manual. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna check these for tightness, because once we mount the scope, it'd be hard to come back to it. So it looks like it's a T10. And we broke the freaking bit. Okay, so we had it dialed up to 50 inch-pounds and we broke the bit. So we're gonna dial back to 40 inch-pounds, and we're just gonna secure these to tightness. Normally 30 to 40 inch-pounds is about where you want it to set. 30 normally. You know what? Let's just go ahead and dial it back to 30, because it seems that 40 is a little tight as well. And what this thing does is, if you notice this, listen to it. So it breaks over. It's just like a torque wrench that you would have for the tires on your truck if you go to Discount Tire or to your local tire shop. And whenever it hits 30 inch-pounds, it breaks over. So you can't over tighten, but it snugs it to a specific inch-pound torquing. Okay, so we have checked those for tightness. We have them down at 30 inch-pounds. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our scope and we are going to set it in. And there we go. Now, I like my scopes a little further back than most people, but you know, everybody's different. So the T10 is going to be too small for these screws here to tighten this up. This is going to be a T25. So we'll switch over. We're going to stay at that 30 inch-pound mark for these guys. And I'm just going to snug this up, because what I want to do is I want to put my shoulder on it. I want to make sure it's at the proper seating for whenever I bring the gun up to my eye, it's comfortable to view through the viewing tube. So I get that cinched to where it's not going to move. I'm going to open up my caps. And what I want to do is I want to close my eyes, and I want to position this thing on my shoulder just like I'm going to shoot. That's comfortable. And now I'm going to open my eyes. And what I want to do is make sure that I can see everything inside of that scope. Now, in all honesty, it might be a little far back, but that's pretty solid. So you close your eyes, position yourself, and open up. And you want to see the full field of view. And so I have this completely magnified up. This is a first focal plane scope. So in order to use the reticle, you have to have it sighted or cinched all the way up to the highest magnification. So normally at the highest magnification is where you're going to have the most trouble looking through the scope. And if I can open my eyes and see full field of view, it's at a good position. So we like that. Set her back down. And now we're going to torque them over and get them tight. I always like to give them a double click just to be safe. These should be nice and tight, but you never know. We had it at 30. We're going to dial it, so that's at 20. Now we're at 18. Just, guys, I'm telling you right now, you get one of these, and anytime you go into the field, give it a once over, double check everything, because there's nothing worse than getting out to the target range or getting out to the deer stand and squeezing the trigger and missing and finding out that you had a couple screws loose and your scope is jumping around inside of your rings and bases. So now that we have the scope set on the gun, now is the time to go down to the range and we'll do a little bore sighting action. Now, we have another cheat code, and I'm hoping that it works because I've only used it once and it did work. But this little guy right here is the Sightmark sight laser. And the cool thing about it is you just put it on there, turn it on, and that laser points at the target downrange, and you look through your scope and you bring your scope to the laser, and it should be pretty daggone close to being on paper and bore sighted 100%, so that then you can fine tune it upon shooting. So let's go pay our dues and get us a spot. We'll do some checking down there. Stay tuned.